Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another FP&A Trends Webinar. And today we are going to talk about what is xP&A in action and how we can enhance FP&A agility with supply chain planning. My name is Larissa Malnichuk. I'm CEO and Managing Director at FP&A Trends Group and International FP&A Board. And I'm here today to welcome so many of you. We have almost 370 and more registrations. I can see that people registering as we speak. 61 countries, and people are coming from different industries, different backgrounds. So welcome to another webinar. The agenda for today. So we will look at some definitions of extended planning and analysis and supply chain. And then we will have two case studies from leading organizations. One is from Electrolux, another one from Ecolab. And then we will look how technology can enable the integration between FP&A and supply chain. Of course, we will have conclusions and recommendations. Q&A session will be at the end. And now it's a good time to call for my very experienced panel that join us from 3 different continents. Please, can you join me? Paul, Marat, Nathan? Fantastic. So let us start from very, very quick introductions, and let us start from Paul Moll. Paul is a former member of our Stockholm FP&A board, where he presented, where he resided previously, and now he's based in Hong Kong. Paul is Global Transformation PMO at Electrolux company, and today Paul will share with us the case study of his company. Paul, welcome.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks, Larissa.
Thank you so much. So now our European panelist, Marat Lomakov. Marat is based in Zurich, Switzerland. He has many years of experience. And today he is going to talk about supply chain and finance transformation and integration in his company, Ecolab. So the second case study. Marat, fantastic to have you here. Welcome.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Larissa.
Thank you so much. The next one is our American panelist, Nathan Goldstein, who is Supply Chain Planning Director at CCH Tagetik, based in Dallas, US, and again, a lot of years of experience, not only in supply chain, but in global transformation initiatives. And today, Nathan is going to share with us his vision and his thought leadership on how technology can help this integration between FP&A and supply chain. Nathan, welcome.
Thank you, Larissa. Excited to be with you today.
Fantastic. So now you can switch off your cameras, panelists, and I have just a few general slides here. So FP&A Trends Group, as you know, we are in 27 cities and 16 countries on 4 continents. And the great news that we are starting our face-to-face meetings, and it would be from the end of April. Also, what we're doing best practice workshops and FP&A advisory as well. About today's webinar. So we have only 1 hour, but a lot of interesting things for you. Your participation is welcome. We will have 2 polling questions. We will have a Q&A session, and you can start to send your questions straight away, after the first presentation via the chat box. Presentation is available in the handouts, and we will send you the recording and the presentation within 2 days after this webinar. And of course, at the end of the webinar, there will be a quick survey, and your feedback always very, very appreciated. Before we start, thank you so much to CCH Tagetik. Thank you so much to Wolters Kluwer. Thank you for their support. It's one of the global software provider for FP&A for consolidation with more than 1,000 customers worldwide. And I will start with just a few definitions. I know that we shared with you definitions many times, but for those who join us for the first time, I would like to remind you about the definition of extended planning and analysis. So what it is? xP&A we call it, or it stands for Extended Planning and Analysis. And this is the fact that FP&A is not working only in finance anymore. It really extends to operational and strategic level. And also, it's all about analytical transformation, about modern FP&A skills, about business partnering culture. Those are the key requirements for extended planning and analysis. And today, we are going in more details at one particular area of xP&A, supply chain, and how they could be integrated together, finance and supply chain. Just a quick definition of supply chain. Of course, we will know this, but somehow to remind everyone, supply chain planning deals with how business turn their raw materials or resources into finished products or services. And it also deals with transportation and delivery and distribution of those products or services. So we're all aware of what is going on in the world. During COVID time, there were major disruptions of supply chain. At the moment, the latest crisis in Europe, 2 weeks ago, it was another black swan for all of us. And of course, supply chain is very much affected. So we really need to understand how to integrate and how to deal with this. So as usually on our webinars, we like to look at the subjects from different points of view, from different countries and experiences and industries. So this is how we look at this today. Electrolux case study, Ecolab technology for integration. And the first presentation is from Paul Moll, Global Transformation PMO, Electrolux, the case study from this company. Paul, you're welcome and the stage is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Larissa. Before I dive into the subject, let me at least also express my appreciation to you guys, but especially to your team. We know that the FP&A team is situated in Ukraine. There's a lot of Ukrainian people there. And I was super impressed that although the disturbing times that we have in Ukraine, you and your team kept going. And I think this says something not only about your team, but about the Ukrainian people. And I think if I speak about on behalf of all of us, we really, your Ukrainian people are in our hearts, and we wish you all the strength that is needed in these very disturbing times. I just want to make sure that this key topic, which is now on the world stage, is not unmentioned. All right, then to the subject. Sorry, yeah, then to the subject. So here it says Paul Moll, Global Transformation PMO. Prior to this role, I was a global sourcing director here in Hong Kong, and there I had to deal on a day-to-day basis with supply chain issues. And in these supply chain issues, you often have to deal with one of the critical, actually economic questions that we all had in school, is how to deal with scarcity. And then the question is, in terms of the FP&A team, how we deal with scarcity and keep protecting the P&L of the companies, because that's the key of our role. And if we go to our next slide, I want to go first, give a little bit of context, right? So Electrolux ships about 55,000 containers a year. We negotiate the container prices ourselves, but we also organize the shipping ourselves. So we buy product from a supplier in mainland China, he brings it to the port, but the rest is organized by us. We ship about 25 million products. That's 4,000 different type of products. We got small ones where you can put about 2,000 in a container, and we got big ones where you can only put about 40 in one container. And I'll explain a little bit more why that is important. And for China, we pretty much use all the ports in China. And if you look at the next slide, what you'll see is that COVID happened, and that has a very impact on us. All of a sudden, the containers were not available anymore. The price of the containers went skyrocket 2-3 times higher. The products that we sell to our customers are our home appliances products, and they got an increase in demand. People stayed at home, so they wanted to have more of our products. And then on the ports, we got port congestions Because of COVID, ports could not be manned. So even if we would have containers, they would not be able to be shipped. And once they were shipped to, for instance, the US, they were not able to come back. So those are our key critical components that we needed to make a decision how to deal with the scarcity. And that ended up in a very practical question. What are we going to ship? What product will we ship? And looking at the next slide, that question needed to be answered based on quite some things that you needed to take in consideration. How many containers would you have available? Which port location would be open? But what is also the distance of that port location towards a factory? If I can ship from North China, but the factory location is in South China, it doesn't make sense to ship goods there. What happened to the container cost? And the impact can be very different from product to product. If a container would go from $4,000 to $12,000, for a small product, that would have an impact of $4 per product in terms of landed cost. For a big product, that could actually be $200. And in our case, the cost for shipping became higher than the cost of the actual product that we had, which of course had a tremendous impact on the profitability of the product. Then if we look at cost, right, which cost do you need in these analysis? Do you take actuals or do you take standards? In the beginning, there was opposed to, hey, guys, let's take standards because we need to make a quick decision. But we just came out of a situation where we had high increases of prices due to FX and raw material. So we needed to make actuals to do the right calculation and take the right things in consideration. Then commercial. Are there any of these price increases that we can push to our customers? Are there customers that will charge us penalties if we don't ship to them? What is the relationship with that customer? Is the new customer that we really want to grow and we really want to ship to them? Or is it a customer which maybe is less important to us, that relationship? And of course, it's profitability, right? What product is more profitable than the others in order to make that decision what to ship or not to ship? But there are other things which are maybe not less evident. Seasonality. We had products that we needed to actually ship in a period between January and April, otherwise the season would be gone. These were air conditioners. And even if the profitability of the air conditioners was maybe a little bit lower than some of the other products, if we didn't ship them between January and April, we would miss the North American season. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we need to take in consideration. There's a lot of stakeholders that manage these things that we need to take in consideration. And there's a lot of decision takers. And then if you look at the data side of it, right, there's a lot of data that you need for in order to do a good analysis to get to the right conclusion. Loading quantities, port of locations, ETA, etc., etc. And these come from various data sources, but also various data owners. And in some companies, the data are still very much in silos. So what did we do in Electrolux? That's what I'm going to tell you in the next slide. In the next slide, we see that we actually managed it through people, and people. We filled tons of Excel sheets. Those Excel sheets were copied in multitude of PowerPoints that were sent out to people by emails that we also used to collect information. And we had team session after team session after team session. We did very well. We managed the crisis actually very, very well. But the fact that we did it in a very manual, people-orientated way had an impact on the speed and the quality of the decision taking. And I think that's the important thing is what can we actually improve and what are we working on? And that's going to be shown in the next slide. The next slide shows it can be not only people alone. It needs to be a combination of people and systems. You need to make sure that your data is available, right? That you get the right data already available and you don't waste time on collecting it. You need to connect the dots. you need to understand what is the port and the factory location and how these things interconnect. What is the price of a container doing to the profitability of the product? What's the seasonality of the product? These dots you need to connect together with that data. And based on that, you can do scenario plannings. And also, why is this very, very important? And as I'm going to show you on the next slide, because in my opinion, it will happen again. COVID is not a standalone thing. And by the way, it does. The global chip shortage, right, that now can last to 2023, we had a similar problem. Which chips was used in which product? Which product did we ask our suppliers to produce, so we can make the right decision in order to deal with it in a way that it protects the P&L. So here I think it was an example how within Electrolux we dealt with that critical question around economy. How do you deal with scarcity, and how do you deal it in a way that protects your P&L the best? And now what I would like to see is actually, how are you guys doing? What's the situation in your company in terms of the integration between the supply chain teams and the finance teams? And we got a polling question here. Marissa, can you take that?
Absolutely. Paul, fantastic presentation, excellent case study. So I'm opening the poll question now. And please, can you start voting as soon as you see the polling question? And we would like to understand, what is your current status of connecting supply chain and finance FP&A? And there are 3 options, and please choose the one that is the best description. They are fully integrated, they are partially integrated, they are completely disconnected. Please, can you continue to vote? Just a few seconds. I can see that almost 50% of you voted. Once again, what is your current status of connecting supply chain and FP&A? And the options are, they are fully integrated, they are partially integrated, or they are completely disconnected. More than 50% of you voted. It's almost 60, just a few seconds. Please vote. And now I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. So what we can see, fully integrated 10%, partially integrated 52%, completely disconnected 38%. Paul, your quick commentary, please.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my compliments to the top 10%, right? They're fully integrated. I think that's really well done, and I think you had a very good forward-looking view. To the green and the purple ones, I'm not surprised about it. I mean, it's a process that we need to go through, and it's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I'm sure that the next speakers will give you some good insights on how to get there.
Absolutely, I'm not surprised as well. I'm hiding the results, and it's a time for a very quick discussion between our panelists. And this is the question. Dear panelists, can you join me in? Can you switch on your cameras? And this is the first quick mini discussion for us. So how we can connect those dots between supply chain and FP&A? So what would be your suggestions? Can we start from you, Murat?
Yeah, sure, and thanks. It's a great question. First of all, so for me, there should be a set of aligned KPIs and the targets. And as I saw from the poll, a lot of organizations are not aligned yet in these, because they're claiming that the finance function and supply chain are completely disconnected. And in this case, I can advise only to take a leadership a little bit in the finance hands. And first of all, normally as a finance function, we know like what are the key KPIs, because that's then how the companies are reporting the results, and start driving it through the organization. And quite often it needs to be also the buy-in from the management, from different stakeholders, from the board, like we can go up and up and up, but without the set of aligned KPIs and the targets across the budgeting, planning, forecasting process, it's extremely difficult to get any integration.
It's a great advice. Thank you so much, Murat. And Nathan, what would be your answer to this question? How to connect the dots?
Sure. I think taking off on what Murat had to say there, I think once you've got those alignment on KPIs, you need to put a plan of attack in place. If you have your cross-functional leaders come together in somewhat of a tiger team approach, you really need to actionize how you're going to go about achieving those KPIs and the alignment around those KPIs, and have a roadmap, whether that is addressing both the people and the process and the technology side of what you're going about and looking to achieve.
Thank you, Nathan. And Paul, you just presented fantastic actions. Would you like to add something here?
No, I think great comments from Murat and Nathan, and I'm taking a little bit of a step back into the process. It's about education, it's about training. We got to make sure that people really understand what those KPIs are, because if you don't, it's going to be relatively hard to align on them. And building on what Nate said, yes, it needs to be action driven, but also there you need to understand what are the KPIs are, so you can really take that action on the KPI. So for me, it's a bit about education and training.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. And now this is the timing to look at the second case study, and it would be Ecolab success story. And Murat Lomakov is here, Finance Director, Europe Supply Chain at Ecolab. Murat, you're welcome, and the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Larissa. Happy to be here, and again, big kudos to you and the team for organizing this event. So, and today I would like to share with you an example of what we've done in our company to better integrate supply chain and then finance teams to manage risk and profitability. And if you go to the next slide, so it's basically just a little bit of a snapshot of what was happening in the world recently, and it was becoming more and more challenging, obviously. And last year, we were changing the whole world of supply chain quite drastically. Climate, geopolitics, cybersecurity, all of these put a lot of pressure on resource consumption and consequently on supply chains. We've seen that inflation cycles are getting like bigger and wider. Weather changes, climate preservation demand, significantly changing the ways how the supply chain and operating. And well, we all read the newspapers and see it, I guess, very well in our daily operations. And when pandemic, the COVID-19 started, it only amplified all of those challenges by bringing the new ones. Logistics became much more challenging, like Paul just explained. There were like much more demand and supply imbalances in the world due to different regional measures. And this only led to massive acceleration of the issues which supply chain was already experiencing and now continuing to experience. So the normal way of doing things is changing, and we call it like a new normal. And it also requires a new way of working. And in fact, it gives a perfect case for change and perfect reason for change within the organization. And in Ecolab, like I will be explaining on the next slide, we had already fairly established way and good integrated supply chain and financial planning processes. So, and on example of procurement forecast, I can tell you what we've been doing. So, as a company who is producing a lot of chemical products, we are impacted by raw materials and feedstock pricing impact, which are coming from the external market. And we do the forecast based on our reading of external market indexes and some key commodities which we are following. We map them to specific raw materials which we procure, and based on some historical volumes or volumes projection mapped to the commodities dependencies and market indexes, we can basically do the forecast for our procurement function. However, as I said, the new norm requires also the new way of working. Well, we found out that actionability of the old way of doing business in the business units who are selling these products is actually under question. They don't sell their roles in the end. So, and we found out that we had to go further And we started to develop locally and finally introduce the system, tool, or technology, you name it the way you want, so which actually integrates the sourcing insight which procurement team had together with products which we are selling into analytics hub, where these end-to-end links can be seen. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you some of the views which are coming out of this system. It's a locally developed proprietary self-service platform powered by BI. And it's very intuitive for any internal user to get the information needed for various purposes. And it helps also exchange a lot of information between the functions. So in this view, you can see that the readings of various commodities are paired to the materials which we procure and products which we sell to specific customer. So it's not only the procurement team who knows what the impacts will be, but also business units who now will be able to understand where in which part of the portfolio, which customers and which products, elements of the products portfolio will be the most exposed to the recent moves. They also can summarize those impacts by the businesses, like shown on the left, for example, and it significantly boosts and also simplify the way how the organizational level forecast can be done. So, and then not only forecast is important here, but also what can be done with this analytics. So on the right, there are some snapshots of various information can be retrieved out of it. So like, well, what are specific products again impacted by certain material moves? What are specific customers are impacted by the same moves? So, and this enables businesses to make some decisions. Do we want to change the price? Do we want to change the portfolio? And this provides again the great opportunity to act on this data. It's a huge and complex system, so and not only technology is extremely important here, but also the change management, how it is all implemented and accepted within the organization. So is this tool perfect? No, I have no illusion on that. And I'll be talking on the next slide on some of the challenges which we faced and what helped us to overcome those challenges during this deployment. So, and the first thing starts with an acknowledgement that no system can be perfect. Yeah, we had quite some gaps in master data, in the coverage, in ERPs, source ERPs from which we are taking the data. And here it's extremely important to spend a lot of time on explanation and education. So, and I keep reminding people about the Pareto principle, which has to be followed. And if you have already, I don't know, 80% of the data available there, so should you wait for another 20 to come up to get the information a little bit more accurate, or you can act on this already now based on the data which you already have. So, and speaking of the choice between the speed and the accuracy, yeah, well, we had to prioritize that it needs to be also some time critical system to enable the decision to be taken, because we wanted to provide option to the business for them to act. What else helped to manage the transition? So we had actually to learn to talk the same language. So, well, we realized that we procure raw materials, but business is selling products. Yeah? So, and we need to turn our way of communicating also in the language which will be understood by our business partners. And you may find out that this challenge is also not towards external team, but internal teams. Are they ready for such implementation and such adjustments in the way how they work? Yeah. So, and what helped here in our case is basically the common understanding that the business results needs to be driven by purposeful analytics to deliver the target. And it's not enough just to report the number, just to say, here is what we see, but how this number reported, how can it drive the insight and consequently the action from various business units. And these were some of my practical examples. I don't know if you go the same way of implementing the system or technology like we did, but I hope this would be useful for you to create a case for change and manage the transition in your organization. And now I would like to hear about you and your experiences.
Murat, thank you so much. Excellent story. about experience of your company. And you mentioned the barriers that you have in your organization. I'm launching the poll because we would like to hear from our audience what is the biggest barrier to effective FP&A and supply chain integration in your organization. We would like to know about one, which is the biggest for you. So please, can you start voting? And the options are lack of knowledge about the subject, lack of skills, not enough alignment of those KPIs, or problems with systems and processes. So please, can you continue to vote? I can see that almost half of you already voted, just a few seconds. And once again, what is the biggest barrier you think is in your organization right now between effective FP&A and supply chain? And the options are not enough knowledge, not enough skills, not enough KPIs and drivers, and problems with systems and processes. So please, can you continue? Just a few seconds. I'm closing the poll and I'm sharing the results with everyone. They are not even results. We can see that the biggest percentage, 60%, they say that it's problems with systems and processes. The next biggest is the lack of aligned KPIs. And then 16% said that not enough knowledge about the subject, and only 4% said that not enough skills. Murat, would you like to comment quickly, please?
Yeah, it's interesting results, and thanks a lot for feedback. It's super insightful. So for me personally, it was a little bit difficult question, because I think that all of those things are coming up in this or that way. So, but first of all, happy to see that pretty much minority sees the lack of skills as a problem. So it means that we see our finance organization is very skillful. So that's great. And then at the same time, yeah, problems with the systems and the processes. Yeah, this creates a lot of space actually for improvements and for adopting the new way of doing things. So yeah, that's great results.
I think very interesting results actually. Yeah. So, and it almost shows us what should be the set of actions. I'm hiding the results, and we have our second mini discussion, and I would like to ask our panelists to join in. And it's all about the balance between speed and accuracy. Murat, in your presentation, you mentioned this about Pareto principle. So I think it's so important at the moment to be quick and dynamic and agile. That is why I would like to set this question, how to find the balance between speed and accuracy. And I would like to ask Paul to answer this question first.
Right. Yeah, it's a difficult one, right? But one thing that I personally like to implement and do with my teams is what I call the one-day answer. So you just give 1 day and then you can come up with an answer. And then based on that, that's going to be the first input to see where you can drive that balance. But I think also forcing finance team to actually produce a result without having all data available is important, because that's a bit of a cultural mindset. So for me, the answer is a 1 day answer.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Nathan, what would be your answer?
Well, first off, I love Paul's 1 day perspective, but I actually want to refer back to something that Paul mentioned in his presentation around standard and actual costs. And we see this a lot in the supply chain realm, where we encourage customers to think about and focus their attention on the cost inputs that are actually going to change the decision they make from a supply chain planning perspective, right? Where if a cost is going to actually cause them to source differently, or add a production shift, or whatever the case may be from a supply chain planning perspective, those are the costs where we really encourage customers to take a deeper look and spend more time to ensure that those calculations are correct, particularly in a world of uncertainty that we're living in today, and where the variance in cost might not impact the decision to change, or a wider band of variance. They might still do the same thing. We encourage them to move forward quicker in those types of situations.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this commentary. Obviously, managing your supply chain in this incredible environment, it's managing your profitability. So, Marat, you did a great presentation and you answered those questions, but would you like to add something, especially from the point of view of practical steps, how to implement this balance, please?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, there is no universal answer on this, and each and every one of you would need to find an answer which would suit you, your organization, your team, your specific situation. But as a practical advice, I would start thinking about materiality threshold. So what is material in your specific case? What is the important amount? And going back to the example which Paul brought up on using the actual cost versus standards. So in this specific case, I guess Paul concluded that they cannot use standards because they're too far off from the reality, and they concluded this difference is just too big for this specific case, for this specific moment. So, and the same principle each of you can apply in your day-to-day life. So sometimes you have simpler information available quicker. Now the question is it good enough to give you answer now, or you still need to search for something better?
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. We are moving on to the next presentation. And before we start the next presentation about technology for integration and how technology enhances this integration, I would like to invite everyone to continue to send your questions. You can do this very easily through this chat box, and we will be able to answer all of them. If not enough time, we will do this in writing. So please continue to send questions. So let us look at technology enhancement for integration. And we have Nathan Goldstein, Supply Chain Planning Director at CCH Tagetik. Nathan, you're welcome.
Thank you, Larissa. I think the results of the last poll question are a very natural lead-in to this part of the discussion. As technologists, as we think about how technology can enable the integration between FP&A and supply chain, we typically start by thinking about what the integration of the two business processes look like, which then enable us to define a set of use cases. If we go to the first slide here, Larissa, and so what I would like to do with the next few minutes then is just give you a few practical examples of those use cases where technology can enable that integration between FP&A and supply chain planning. The first use case is really at the tip of the spear from a supply chain planning perspective, and that's the consensus demand planning, whereby demand planners can have a view of what finance is forecasting from a sales perspective. So on the next slide, we've got a perspective of that, and technology's role in enabling this integration is twofold. First, obviously there is the data integration and the ability for demand planners to see what finance is forecasting from a sales perspective. There's also a large data translation effort that technology can enable. That is to say, obviously finance is not forecasting at the same level of detail, and typically finance is forecasting in revenue rather than a unitary forecast in the way that supply chain and demand planners are forecasting. The other way that technology can enable this particular use case is in automating the implementation of business rules. That is to say, how will supply chain use this information from finance to enhance or improve the accuracy of the forecast that supply chain is using to then prepare the supply enablement or the supply response to this demand plan. The next use case that I want to introduce, which is revenue management or trade spend allocation. is a really good one in that particularly for consumer products companies, it really involves so many different business functions. Finance, of course, owns the budget for trade spend, whereas sales and marketing is working with the trade partners to define the calendars with the retail organizations, while demand planners are responsible for calculating the lift over and above base demand of the various merchandising opportunities, and of course supply planners are responsible for ensuring we have enough supply to meet that incremental demand. And technology's role in this particular use case, highlighting the integration between FP&A and supply chain planning, is to ensure we have the proper feedback loops. What if we have an opportunity, for example, that requires us to go back to finance and ask for a budget increase? Or what if, for example, we have a supply shortage that will result in our inability to satisfy all of the incremental demand that a particular promotion opportunity is generating. The next use case really goes directly to the heart of what most supply chain organizations' primary objective is, which is to have the right inventory at the right location at the right time. And for organizations that are still using a fairly simplistic approach for inventory optimization and replenishment planning, I'm using a fill rate or a coverage strategy. This notion of integration between FP&A and supply chain planning may not be as important, but for those organizations using more of an advanced economic-based strategy, technology's enablement here is giving them the ability to accurately make the trade-off decision between the probability and cost of a lost sale versus the cost of carrying inventory. And of course, that's the integration here between finances, production cost, and control planning, and supply chain's inventory optimization and replenishment planning. And then the final use case that I wanted to share is probably the one that, in my experience, gets CFOs most excited in current day, which is to say, the ability to fully understand the financial impact of operational plans. What will our inventory position be at the end of the current quarter, at the end of the next quarter, or at the end of the year? And technology can ensure that forecasts are tied to executable plans. And that really should be the ultimate goal of xP&A. And with that, I know that we're done with the polling questions, but I'd like to bring back my other two panelists and get their feedback in terms of our last discussion question around tool versus process.
Nathan, before we start the discussion, I would like to say thank you so much. Excellent insights and interesting case studies as well. And the question is, you can see it here, what should be the leading, the tool or the process? And shall we start from you, Paul?
Yeah, again, you like to take the good questions, right? It's a little bit the chicken and the egg for me. My initial thought would be process. I think tools should be supporting a process. On the other hand, I've also seen situations where processes were just so bad that the tool actually helped to improve the processes. So it actually depends a little bit on the quality of the process, which goes first. But if you force me to make a decision, I'll choose process.
Paul, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And Murat, in your view,
Thanks for questions. So like I would tend to agree with Paul, because well they're going like hand to hand together, and the one cannot do without another. So you cannot do a process without tools. It will just take too much of the time. You cannot have tools without processes, because they will not be actionable at all. So, but I still with a little bit bias on the action and actionable analytics. I believe that the process must be there. So, and yeah, if you can, the lack of tools, you can still compensate with probably a lot of manual work in the end, and the lack of the process is a little bit hard to compensate.
Excellent, thank you, Marat. And Nathan, any addition from your side?
Yeah, just two quick thoughts. I think the worst thing you can do is use a tool to automate a bad process. And then I think it would behoove all of us to think of this as a cycle rather than a linear activity, whereby, you know, the process informs the usage of the tool, and the usage of the tool informs how you want to improve the process, and so forth in a continuous improvement cycle.
It's a great reminder, and at FP&A Trends we see a lot of examples when excellent system doesn't work because the process wasn't right there. So thank you for sharing all of these insights. Now this is the time for key takeaways before we go to the Q&A session. And just a quick reminder, we already received a lot of interesting questions. Please continue to do this. So now this is the time for quick 30 seconds key takeaways. Paul, what you would like participants to remember after today's webinar?
Well, there's one thing for me. It's about that triangle, right? About process, tools, but also people, right? It's the triangle that needs to work really strong together. I think that's important. And another, this is maybe not a takeaway, but an advice. And I think, Marat, you already mentioned something. I think in FP&A, we need to step up to the plate to take leadership and address these important questions, because often it is in silo. You know what? Okay, it's supply chain, so I am finance, I cannot touch it, or it is quality and I cannot touch it. And I think those times are over. I think finance people need to step up to the plate, take that ownership to drive those tough discussions, and those discussions then supported with the right tools, the right data, and the right processes.
Excellent conclusion, Paul. Marat, your 30 seconds key takeaways, please.
Yeah, thank you, Larissa. So three key takeaways. So decide, align, own KPIs. So then be modern and try to implement the technology and use the achievements on the latest technologies which you can have. And finally, focus on the people. Don't forget about the people, because they are the ones who will be executing the process on the way. And focus on the people and change management within all of this.
Excellent reminder, Marat. Thank you. Nathan, your key takeaways, 30 seconds, please.
Sure, Larissa, I think mine is just a word of encouragement to embrace the challenge of FP&A. I think the reality is that your people, the planners from a supply chain perspective for sure, are already making trade-off decisions every day from a financial and operational perspective, and you know, better to arm them with the tools and the information to make those decisions from an educated perspective than not. And so embrace the challenge. There are people available to support that activity going forward, and you'll be better for it in the long run.
Nathan, thank you so much. Thank you for your conclusions. And from my side, I would like to make conclusion that definitely this is the time of not only FP&A, financial planning and analysis, but xP&A, extended planning and analysis. And definitely FP&A has the role to play in supply chain, in integrating it. This is the timing now for Q&A session. Let us start, and we already have a lot of interesting questions. I would like to remind everyone, please continue to send your questions. Even if we don't have enough time to answer all of them, we will do this after the meeting through email. Paul, a very interesting question to you. So this is the first question. So how to find those KPIs, key performance indicators, both internal and external, so what should be the process in order to define this Pareto principle? And also the second part of the question, what is the difference between the drivers and key performance indicators for supply chain and finance, for integrating of those both?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, so going back to the first question, and I think that's linked to the other one. In order to set the right KPIs, is that you need to understand what are your value drivers. And a KPI needs to be able to influence the behavior of the people. So they need to do the right thing. So that's for me is the critical to find things about what are the value drivers and how do I want to change the behavior of people to contribute to those value drivers. I think that's a very important one. And to the other question, what are the most important KPIs on supply chain or on finance? That highly depends on organization to organization. One thing that we definitely these days look on very much is product availability. So making sure that we actually have something to sell, because that at this point in time was critical for us. That was something which wasn't critical before. So picking the right KPIs can also change in terms of times. Like I said, in the past, we had no issue whatsoever to find a container. If we didn't have a shipping line negotiated, we negotiated in 1 to 2 weeks, we would be okay. That's not happening now anymore. So having containers available has become a KPI.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. The next question is to you, Marat. It's all about vision. It's all about strategy and execution. We just recently discussed this at one of our webinars. But the question is, how do you see this gap between organizational vision and strategy and the way middle managers emphasize the line of analysis? In this particular case, those middle managers and those people that are dealing with supply chain, and how it could be resolved, this gap, this huge gap between the company's vision and execution?
That's an interesting question. And yeah, let me try to answer this in the following way. So I think again in my practice, I always was trying to step a little bit aside and think, okay, what can I do if I'm not only like a finance person? Okay, so like, well, what can I do more? So or how can I go out a little bit of the normal way of thinking in the given problem? So and even if the gap is like just too big to close, and this might seem to be just enormous to do, so then even like smaller steps can help. Okay, so and different ways we were talking about, like, well, the huge system which was implemented in my example. So the process, the crisis management, which Paul was doing in his example. So different situation, completely different approaches, but action, what helps to do something. So just start acting, start doing something, even with the small steps, the gap will be closing. So and this would be probably my approach to close it.
Marat, thank you so much. Thank you for your answer. Nathan, you're the next one. And actually, I combined two questions here because they're very similar. So the first question is about if we would like to have this integration, does it mean that we need to have two separate systems, FP&A planning and supply chain planning? This is the first question, or whether it should be the same system. And the second one, our participants are curious what combination of IT systems, of IT technologies they need in generic term, but in this particular, people asking, what should be the combination of IT systems such as banking, treasury, accounting, planning for best in commodity related FP&A, you see. So my understanding that actually it's industry agnostic, yeah. So but if you feel that it's not, Nathan, so can you answer those questions, please?
I will certainly attempt to do so. I think I'll take on the first part of that question first. From a underlying foundation perspective, and Paul touched on this a bit in his presentation, the most important part of this integration from a technology perspective is bringing in so much of the siloed data in order to support some of these use cases that we all three touched on, to be able to combine the financial and operational data to support better planning and better decision making. So the one part that does need to be integrated in a common platform is the data layer, the data integration. What doesn't necessarily have to be presented to the various user groups in a common user experience is the actual financial planning and analysis functions, the way you do your close and consolidation, or the way you actually do your financial plan or your budget process, versus the way you build a demand plan, and the way you optimize your inventory, and the way you do your production and capacity planning, and those types of traditional supply chain planning functions versus traditional financial planning functions. Those don't necessarily have to occur in a common user experience. Those can be unique, and it's okay to recognize that those are unique user groups with their own special and specialized user experience needs and requirements. But it's the underlying data layer that we need to recognize have to be able to talk to each other, and that some of that financial data needs to be able to make its way into the operational planning environment, and some of that operational data needs to be able to make its way into the financial planning environment.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nathan. Thank you for your answer. And now we have a time for the last question, and this is question to everyone, but the answer should be like 20 seconds. So only one key point. The question is, we introduced SNOP process in my former company in order to exploit the full potential of this system. Unfortunately, it wasn't very successful. That is why we would like to understand what framework we should follow in order this integration to be really successful. So in your experience, what are the key lessons you can share? And I would suggest, because of the lack of time, if each one of you share very quickly, like 20, 30 seconds, only one lesson. Paul, your lesson, please.
For me, it's change management. Sorry, Marat, maybe I'm picking your one, but change management is critical in any system implementation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Marat, your key lesson?
Yes, probably very, very similar. So I don't think that there is a better system, because SNOP is just a big definition and theoretical thing. But then how it works and how it's implemented in specific organization would matter a lot. So, and no place is ideal. So we also had some bumps on the road when we were doing this. So, well, it needs to be a thorough look in the process and attempt to improve what you have already.
Thank you, Marat. And Nathan, your key lesson, please.
Yeah, I think I'll add to what Paul said around change management. Don't rely exclusively on the technology vendor. The technology vendors aren't the best at driving that change management, and we certainly is why we partner with management consulting organizations that's their DNA, that's what they're experts at doing, and it's important to get that full picture, not just from the vendor of choice from a technology perspective, but from the management consultant that can help you drive that process and change management, organizational alignment as well.
Thank you. A great reminder, Nathan. Please stay with me. I have only a few final slides before we say bye-bye to everyone, but I would like to ask everyone to stay and to share with us your feedback that will open just after we close the webinar. We started this FP&A Trends survey. It's already for the 5th year, and it gives benchmark for many of us around the globe, and I really would like to encourage you to complete this survey. It's quite quickly, it's around 10 to 12 minutes, but you will be the first to receive this complete survey. So if you can do this, it would be highly, highly appreciated. The next one, of course, we continue to deliver those webinars, and the next one about business modeling and how to evolve from Excel to integration. Actually, in this presentation, you can see the link. If not, you can go to our FP&A Trends website. The next one on the April 12th, it's about transforming FP&A process through advanced analytics. And again, registration process already started. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much to our sponsor, to Walter Klus, to CCH Tagetik. So one of those global providers of FP&A systems and supply chain systems as well. Thank you so much for your support. I would like to say thank you so much to all our participants. Thank you for sharing, for voting, for asking questions. Please continue to be involved. Please send us your case studies and your insights and your thought leadership. Of course, I would like to say thank you so much to my very incredible and brave Ukrainian team. Our team of project managers are there. So thank you so much. I'm so proud of you. You're doing a fantastic job. And finally, I would like to say thank you so much to our fantastic international panel that join us from 3 different continents. Excellent case studies, excellent insights, and we will continue to stay in touch, and hopefully we will meet each other very soon, because at FP&A Trends Group, we will start traveling very soon. So stay safe. And the last thing that I would like to say for all of us, to have very blue and peaceful sky above us. And I mean it, because this is the most important thing for all of us. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.